sun was low that evening when Pastor Mike arrived in Ebeno. He came on a worn-out motorcycle, the kind that coughed before it stopped. Dust followed him as he rode through the narrow road that led into the heart of the village. Children stopped playing and watched him. Women carrying baskets slowed down. Even the air seemed to pause for a moment, as if trying to understand the man who had just arrived. He wore a white shirt, neatly ironed, and a small cross hung around his neck. In his hand, he carried a black leather Bible that looked older than him. His smile was calm, confident, the kind that made people trust him too quickly. He introduced himself to the elders as Pastor Mike, the man sent by God to bring light to Ebeno. He said he had been shown a vision, that the village was under a curse, and that he had been chosen to lift it. The elders, weary from years of drought and sickness, welcomed him warmly. They gave him a small house near the market square, the one that had been empty since old Mama Ebera died. That night, the villagers heard the sound of his prayers echoing through the wind. Loud, passionate, almost desperate. But what they didn't know was that Pastor Mike's prayers were not for God to bless the village. They were for something else, something hidden, something he had brought with him. Within 1 week, everyone in Ebeno had heard about Pastor Mike. He prayed in the market, at the stream, even under the old Irako tree. He spoke with a voice that carried power. Smooth, deep, and full of confidence. One morning, a woman named Mama Chioma brought her sick child to him. The boy had been coughing for weeks. His eyes sunken, his breath shallow. The villagers had tried everything. Herbs, sacrifices, even hospital visits in the nearby town. But nothing worked. Pastor Mike placed his hand on the child's head and began to pray. His voice rose and fell like thunder in the clouds. The villagers knelt, whispering "Amen, Amen," under their breath. Then suddenly the boy coughed 3 times and sat up. He opened his eyes and asked for water. The people shouted. Some cried. Others ran to spread the news. They said a true man of God had come to Ebeno. And from that day, Pastor Mike's fame spread like harmattan fire. Men came with their problems. Women came with their tears. Even the village chief came one night to seek his blessing. But what no one saw were the marks on Pastor Mike's arm, small, dark symbols that glowed faintly when the moon was full. Sometimes, when he prayed alone in his room, his shadow seemed to move differently from his body, like it was whispering back to him. At first, no one thought much of the sounds. It began as faint whispers in the wind, like children giggling far away. Then came soft knocks on windows at midnight, footsteps on dry leaves when no one was outside. Pastor Mike's neighbors said they sometimes heard him speaking when everyone else was asleep. But the strange thing was this: his voice didn't sound alone. It was as if someone, or something, answered him. One night, old Mama Ifioma, who sold palm oil near the church, woke up to see a dim light coming from Pastor Mike's room. She quietly walked closer. Through the small crack of his wooden window, she saw him kneeling, but not to pray. Before him was a clay pot, filled with black liquid. The faint glow of red candles surrounded it. His Bible was open, but his other hand held something small. A feather dipped into the liquid. He whispered, "Let their eyes remain blind. Let them see only what I show." Mama Ifioma gasped softly and stepped back. A sudden wind blew out the candles. Yet she swore she saw something crawl along the wall, tall and thin, like a shadow with hands. The next morning, Pastor Mike led another loud prayer session, smiling as if nothing had happened. When people greeted him, his eyes looked bright and kind, but if you looked closely, there was something else in them. A sharpness, a knowing, a quiet hunger. Weeks passed, and the church in Ebeno grew faster than the yam vines in rainy season. Pastor Mike's name was on everyone's lips. They said his touch could heal, his words could bring rain, and his prayers could drive away evil spirits. But strange things also began to happen, quietly, one after another. A young man who mocked Pastor Mike in the market fell sick the next day. A trader who refused to pay her church tithe found her stall burned by morning. And whenever people talked about these things, Pastor Mike would only smile and say, "Touch not the anointed of the Lord." Every Sunday the church was full. Drums beat loud, women danced, children clapped. But behind the joy, fear lived in every heart. No one wanted to be the next to offend the man of God. One night, during a powerful service, Pastor Mike told the people that God had spoken again. He said the village must offer a special sacrifice of faith. Not an animal, but something more precious. He asked each family to bring an item from their home, something they loved most, and place it at the altar. They obeyed. Some brought family photos, others brought money, jewelry, and even farming tools. By the next morning, the altar was filled. But deep in the night, people said they saw a figure walking around the church compound, gathering the items into a sack. And when the first cock crowed, a foul smell spread across the village, like something burnt in secret. Still, the next day Pastor Mike preached louder than ever. He shouted that blessings would soon rain down on Ebeno. And yet, when the villagers looked at their crops, the leaves were turning black. The stream water was growing thick. Children were falling ill again. It was as if the village itself had started to rot. Among the people of Ebeno, not everyone was blind. 3 villagers began to whisper among themselves. Mama Ifeoma, Okoro the hunter, and Ngozi, the young woman who swept the church compound. They had seen too much. They had felt the chill in the air whenever Pastor Mike passed by. They had noticed that every night before a miracle, he disappeared for hours into the forest behind the village. One night, Okoro followed him. He moved quietly, step by step, his bare feet sinking into soft earth. The moon was half full, hiding behind thin clouds. He watched Pastor Mike stop near an abandoned shrine, one that had been left untouched for decades. There, the pastor knelt and began to chant in a strange tongue, words that sounded like prayers but felt like curses. In the faint light, Okoro saw a small wooden box beside him. Inside it was something that looked like human hair, tied with a red thread. When Okoro returned, his hands trembled. He told Mama Ifeoma and Ngozi everything. They agreed that the village needed to know. But fear kept their voices low because in Ebeno even walls had ears. The next day, they went to the village chief, Iznwosu, a man respected for his wisdom. At first, he refused to believe them. He said, "You cannot speak against a man of God without proof." But that same evening, his youngest son fell unconscious for no reason. And when they took the boy to Pastor Mike for prayers, the pastor only looked at him and said, "Some questions should not be asked." That night, the chief sent for Okoro again. His voice was low when he spoke. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will follow him, but quietly." The air in Ebeno grew heavier. It was as if the village itself was holding its breath. The night was cold, the moon pale and distant. Iznwosu, Okoro, Mama Ifeoma, and Ngozi moved quietly through the narrow path that led into the forest behind the village. Their feet brushed the dry leaves, and the wind whistled softly through the trees. Far ahead, they saw a flicker of light, a lantern swaying gently in the dark. It was Pastor Mike. He walked quickly, his white shirt glowing faintly in the moonlight. The group followed, their hearts beating faster with every step. He stopped at the same abandoned shrine Okoro had seen before. There, he set the lantern down and opened his small wooden box again. Inside it lay items the villagers recognized: necklaces, money, rings, and the carved idol that had once belonged to Ebeno's ancestors. He began to chant. The words were sharp, heavy, and filled with a strange rhythm that made the forest feel alive. The earth trembled slightly. Shadows stretched along the trees as if they were moving toward him. The onlookers froze. They watched as Pastor Mike lifted the idol high and whispered, "Spirit of the Old One, your offering is complete. Give me more power, and they will worship me forever." A sudden wind swept through the forest. The trees groaned, and the lantern light shook. Something, unseen but strong, passed through the air like a breath. Mama Ifeoma gasped, unable to hold herself anymore. "Pastor Mike," she cried, "you are no man of God." Pastor Mike turned slowly. His eyes glowed faintly red, and a cold smile spread across his face. "You should not have come here," he said softly. Now you have seen too much." But before he could take a step, thunder cracked across the sky, loud and deep. Rain began to fall suddenly, though no clouds had gathered before. The lantern went out, and in that moment, the idol slipped from his hand and shattered on the ground. A scream tore through the night. Not human, not earthly. The villagers covered their ears as a gust of wind blew Pastor Mike backward. He fell, his body shaking, his voice crying out strange words as if something inside him was trying to escape. When the wind finally died, the forest fell silent again. Only the sound of rain on leaves remained. When they found him, Pastor Mike lay still, his eyes wide open, staring at the broken idol. His cross had turned black. When dawn came, the rain had stopped. The forest was quiet again, except for the dripping of water from the trees. Okoro and the others carried Pastor Mike's body back to the village. The people gathered, whispering in shock. No one could understand what had happened. His once bright cross now looked burnt. His Bible was soaked, and when they opened it, the pages were blank. Every word gone as if washed away by unseen hands. Iznwosu called for the elders. They sat in a circle under the big Udala tree while the morning sun rose behind them. Mama Ifeoma told the story, everything they had seen in the forest, every word Pastor Mike had spoken. The elders listened in silence. When she finished, the oldest among them, Papa Namdi, spoke softly. "The spirits of Ebeno are strong. He came with falsehood, but the truth has found him. No man can use the name of God for darkness and go free." They buried Pastor Mike outside the village boundary, a place where no one would walk at night. And from that day, the church remained locked. No one dared to enter, but the change in the village came slowly. The water in the stream cleared again. The crops began to grow green and full. The coughing children got better. At night, people still heard the wind whisper through the trees, but this time it was gentle, like a sigh of relief. One evening, Ngozi walked past the church and saw a single candle flicker inside, though the doors were shut. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. Through the broken window, she saw the old Bible lying open again. The words had returned, glowing faintly in the dim light. The page read, "Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Ngozi bowed her head and whispered a prayer of thanks. Then she blew out the candle, and the village of Ebeno finally slept in peace.